I was 17 when my family left me behind and moved to another state. No goodbye, no explanation, just a note saying, "You'll figure it out." 12 years later, after I survived on my own, they came back asking for a second chance. When I was 17 years old, I came home to a completely empty house and a note on the kitchen counter. It was the cruelest thing I'd ever read. It just said, "You'll figure it out." I didn't know what I'd done wrong. I figured they were just tired of pretending to love me. But the truth is, they never even pretended. When I was 13, I baked a birthday cake for my mom. She called me clumsy. When I was 15, I tutored my brother for his final exams. The whole time he called me a know-it-all and slammed the door in my face. When I was 16, I gave my entire paycheck to my dad so he could pay the bills, but I got yelled at when I asked for money later. He said I was useless. I was always useful but never loved. My parents and my brother, my only family, had packed up and moved to another state without telling me. I found out from the landlord a week later. I had 1 week to move out because they had canceled the lease in advance. I slept at a friend's house for 3 nights before I ran out of places to go. In the end, I ended up sleeping in the back of a storage unit I rented with the rest of my savings. I snuck into the YMCA to shower and ate peanut butter straight from the jar for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I applied for jobs using the library's free computers and pretended everything was fine. Eventually, I got a job as a waitress at a diner on the night shift. The manager was tough but fair. She paid me cash under the table until I could get an ID. Once, she let me take a nap in the break room when I almost passed out from exhaustion. I did everything I could to survive. I bought a prepaid cell phone, saved every receipt, and watched free YouTube tutorials about finances and goal setting. The first year I barely survived, but I did it. The turning point came when a regular customer at the diner offered me a temporary job organizing office files. It paid 3 times what I made as a waitress. I took it. That job led to another and another. I learned fast and was always present. I started early and asked questions. By 22, I was working full-time as a freelancer. By 25, I launched a consulting company, just me, a folding table, and a borrowed laptop. By 27, I had 5 contractors working for me, my own office, and a client list that included companies I used to dream about. And by 29, I was officially a millionaire. Not an influencer millionaire, not a fake Instagram millionaire. Real savings in a retirement account, no debt, a paid-off apartment, health insurance I could afford. The first time I saw my bank app reach 7 figures, I cried. During those difficult years, my family never reached out, not even once. I saw my brother suddenly appear on a friend's suggestion list once. Now he's married and still lives in the state where they disappeared to. I stared at the screen for a long time, wondering if he ever told his wife about me. Did he say I ran away? Or did he just say nothing? Sometimes I still wonder if it would have been easier to hate them. But honestly, it was never hate. It was heartbreak. I go to therapy now because I want to stay whole. I made a list of people who saved me when they didn't have to, like coworkers, classmates, and strangers who showed me what real support is. Last week, I participated in a podcast interview about overcoming family estrangement. The story went viral online. It hit 1 million views in 4 days. My inbox was flooded with messages of support, gratitude, and even from strangers saying I gave voice to their pain. And then one email stood out. The subject line read, "You're still our daughter." It was from my mother. Not an apology, just a paragraph about hearing my side and how maybe we could talk. Then another message, this time from my brother. "We miss you. Can we work this out?" I stared at the screen for a long time before closing the laptop. I sat with it and wondered if healing means looking back or moving forward. I didn't respond immediately. I needed time to process everything. My therapist, Melissa, suggested I wait at least a week before making any decision. "Give yourself space to feel whatever comes," she said during our session. "There's no rush to respond." So I did. I focused on work, went to the gym, had dinner with friends, normal things. But those emails haunted me. I kept opening them, reading them, and closing them. My mother's message felt cold, clinical, almost like she was reaching out to a distant acquaintance. My brother's message was shorter but somehow felt more genuine. I couldn't stop thinking about them. After 10 days, I decided to respond to my brother first. Something simple. I wrote, "It's been 12 years. What has changed?" Then I hit send before I could overthink it. His response came in less than an hour. He said the podcast made him realize what they had done. He claimed he was only 15 when they left me, that he had no choice, that he'd always been curious about me, that he'd looked me up online a few times over the years but never had the courage to reach out, that seeing me successful made him proud. I didn't believe it, not completely. If he was so concerned, why wait until I had public success? I asked him exactly that. His next email was longer. He admitted money was tight for them, that my parents' business had failed, his wife was pregnant with their second child, and medical bills were piling up. I felt a chill in my stomach. There it was, the real reason. I didn't respond for another week. Then my mother sent a follow-up email with old family photos attached. Photos of me as a baby, photos of us at the beach when I was maybe 5 or 6, photos of me and Michael building a snowman, happy moments that seemed to belong to someone else's life. At the bottom of the email she wrote, "We made mistakes. We want to make amends." I showed the emails to Melissa during our next session. She reminded me that I was in control, that I could set boundaries, that I didn't owe them anything, but she also said that closure could help me move forward, whether that meant reconciliation or a definitive goodbye. I nodded, but inside I felt conflicted. Part of me wanted to tell them all to go to hell. Another part wanted to understand why they left me. A small, foolish part of me still wanted them to love me. I decided to meet my brother first, just him without my parents. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop in Chicago, halfway between our homes. I took a flight that morning, checked into a hotel, and tried to calm my nerves. I almost canceled 3 times, but at 2 p.m. I walked into that coffee shop and saw him immediately. He looked older, heavier, with a receding hairline, but his eyes were the same. He stood up when he saw me, awkward and uncertain. I didn't hug him. We just sat across from each other with our coffees like strangers. The first 20 minutes were painful. Small talk about the weather, about my flight, about his drive. Then he started apologizing. "Emma, I'm so sorry," Michael said, his voice choking up. "I was just a kid when it happened. I didn't know they were planning to leave you behind until it was too late. I was too scared to confront them. I just listened, watching his face for signs of deception. He seemed sincere, but I'd been fooled before. I asked the question that had haunted me for 12 years. Why me? Why was I the one left behind?" He looked down at his coffee. "They always saw you as the strong one, the independent one, the one who would be fine on her own. They thought you didn't need them as much as I did. They convinced themselves you'd be better off without them." It was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard. I told him about the storage unit, about eating peanut butter for weeks, about showering at the YMCA, about working night shifts at 17. His face crumbled. "I didn't know," he whispered. "They told me you had a plan, that you wanted to stay, that you were going to live with a friend's family, that you had chosen to separate from us. All lies." By the end of our meeting, I didn't know what to think. He seemed genuinely remorseful. He showed me photos of his wife and daughter, told me about his work as an accountant, asked about my business, but didn't directly ask for money, which surprised me. When we said goodbye, he hugged me. I let him, but I didn't hug back. I just stood there with my arms at my sides, feeling nothing. Back at the hotel, I called Melissa and told her everything. She pointed out that while my brother seemed sorry, he still positioned himself as a victim instead of acknowledging his role in my abandonment. She was right. He was 15, not 5. Old enough to pick up a phone, old enough to send an email, old enough to look for me at some point in 12 years. That night, my mother called. I hadn't given her my number, so Michael must have. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice sounded older, raspier. She cried when I said hello. She started talking about how proud she was of me, how she always knew I would succeed, how special I was. I let her vent and then asked her the same question I'd asked my brother. Why me? Her answer was different. We were in debt, Emma. We couldn't support 3 people. We knew you were smart enough to make it on your own. We thought you'd go to social services and be placed with a better family. We thought we were doing you a favor. I hung up on her and blocked the number immediately. I threw my phone across the room and screamed into a pillow. The next morning, I got an email from my father. First contact in 12 years. He didn't apologize. Instead, he wrote about how hard their lives had been, about medical bills and failed businesses, about how Michael's wife needed surgery, about how they were about to be evicted. Then at the end, he asked if I could help the family. No questions about my life, not a single acknowledgement of what they'd done. I forwarded the email to Melissa with the subject line, and there it is. She called me immediately, even though it was Sunday. We talked for an hour about boundaries, about forgiveness versus reconciliation, about the difference between helping someone and enabling them, about what I really wanted versus what I thought I should want. By Monday morning, I'd made my decision. I sent an email to my brother telling him I was glad we met, that I understood he was in a difficult situation when we were younger, and that I was willing to have a relationship with him and his family, but with clear boundaries. No money, no loans, no financial support of any kind, and no relationship with our parents until they took full responsibility for their actions. His response was immediate and revealing. "I'm really disappointed, Emma," he wrote. "Our parents really need help. Families should support each other. You're being selfish with your success." All the guilt triggers they'd planted in me as a child fired immediately. I didn't respond. Instead, I booked a session with Melissa and a trip to Bali. I needed space to process everything. 3 days later, Michael called and left a voicemail apologizing for the email. He said he understood my position, that he still wanted a relationship on my terms, said he would respect my boundaries. I listened to the message twice, trying to decide if he was being sincere or just changing tactics. I decided to give him one more chance, but with my guard up. I went to Bali anyway. I spent 2 weeks on the beach hiking through rice fields and meditating. I needed distance. When I came back, I had 6 more emails from my father, each one more desperate than the last. I didn't read any beyond the subject lines. I also had a message from Michael asking if we could talk again. I agreed to a call. Nothing more. The call started well. He apologized again for pushing. "I've been thinking a lot about what you told me," he said. "I'm doing therapy now too." I believe that part. He sounded different, less defensive. We talked about his kids, about my business, normal things. Then he mentioned that our parents were coming to visit him the following weekend. He asked if I would consider meeting them for just 1 hour in a public place. I felt my chest tighten. "I'm not ready for that, Michael." He pushed a little but backed off when I went silent. After I hung up, I called Melissa. We had an emergency session that night. She helped me realize I was afraid to see them, not because I hated them but because I still craved their approval. Still wanted them to love me. Still wanted to be enough. It was pathetic, but it was true. I cried for an hour in her office. The next day, Michael texted again. He said our mother cried all night after he told her I wouldn't meet them. He said our father was talking about driving to my city anyway. I panicked. I blocked Michael's number immediately. Then I called my assistant and told her I was working from home for the week. I ordered groceries online for delivery. Basically, I hid in my apartment like a scared child. On Wednesday, the doorman called saying there was a couple asking for me. They wouldn't give their names. I knew immediately. I told him I wasn't receiving visitors. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was my father. "Emma, we drove 8 hours to see you," his irritated voice said. "This is childish. We deserve a chance to explain." I deleted the message and turned off my phone. Thursday morning, I woke up to someone knocking on my door. I froze in bed, heart racing. I looked through the peephole. It was them. My parents standing in the hallway as if they had any right to be there. "Emma, please," my mother's voice came through the door. "We just want to talk to you." "We know you're in there," my father added. "We love you. We're sorry." I didn't open the door. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, shaking. Finally they left. I called building security immediately. Told them not to let those people up again. The guard sounded concerned and asked if I needed the police. I said no, just don't let them up. Then I called Melissa. She came over at lunchtime, brought a sandwich and stayed with me while I cried. She said I had every right to set boundaries, that I didn't owe them a meeting, that what they were doing was harassment, not reconciliation. After she left, I got an email from Michael. He was furious. He said I humiliated our parents. Said they were staying at a cheap motel they couldn't afford because they were desperate to see me. Said his wife needed surgery next month and they were hoping I could help. Said I was being cruel. I didn't respond. Friday morning, I decided I needed to get out of town for a while. I booked a flight to visit my friend Rachel in Portland. She was one of the people who helped me when I was homeless. She let me stay on her couch for a week when I had nowhere to go. I trusted her completely. I was throwing clothes into a suitcase when my phone rang. Unknown number again. I ignored it. 10 minutes later, the doorman called. He said there was a woman downstairs with what appeared to be a medical issue. Said she was asking for me by name. Said she claimed to be my mother. I felt sick. I told him to call an ambulance if she needed help, but that I wouldn't come down. He sounded uncomfortable but agreed. I finished packing and went downstairs an hour later. I checked the lobby carefully before entering. No sign of them. I felt relief but also strangely guilty. The doorman gave me an odd look as I passed. He told me the ambulance had arrived, that the woman had chest pains, that she'd been taken to Memorial Hospital. I nodded and rushed to the waiting Uber. At the airport, I got another call from Michael. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mom had a heart attack. He was crying. She's in surgery. It's your fault for stressing her out. I hung up on him. Instead, I called Melissa. She answered immediately. I told her what happened and asked if I was a horrible person. Emma, listen to me, she said firmly. You are not responsible for your mother's health. This sounds like more manipulation tactics to me. Get on your plane and take care of yourself. I did. I spent the weekend with Rachel. I told her everything. She remembered when my family abandoned me. She remembered how devastated I was. She was furious on my behalf. They don't deserve a minute of your time, she said, pouring me another glass of wine. Not after what they did to you. It was good to have someone so firmly on my side. Sunday night, I got an email from my father. My mother was stable. They put in a stent. She'd be discharged Tuesday. The email ended with, "She's asking for you. Don't you think you've punished us enough?" I showed Rachel. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. She told me this was textbook emotional manipulation. I knew she was right, but part of me still felt responsible. I went home Monday and found flowers at my apartment door. The card said, "Please call us. We'll be at the Holiday Inn until Wednesday." No apology, no acknowledgement of boundaries, just another demand. I threw the flowers in the trash. Tuesday morning I got a message from an unknown number. It was a photo of my mother in a hospital bed, pale and weak. The message said she might not have much time left. Do you really want to live with that regret? I blocked the number and called Melissa. She suggested I take a break from social media, change my number, and maybe even stay at a friend's house for a while. I agreed. I called my assistant and said I'd work remotely for 2 weeks. I packed another bag. Before I could leave, my doorman called again. He said there was a young woman downstairs asking for me. Said she had a small child with her. Said she claimed to be my sister-in-law. I felt trapped. These people wouldn't stop. I asked the doorman to let her up. I decided to face this head-on. The woman who knocked on my door looked exhausted. She had dark circles under her eyes. She held a sleeping toddler against her shoulder. "I'm Jenny," she said quietly. "Michael's wife. I came alone because I wanted to talk to you without the family drama." I reluctantly let her in. I offered her water. She accepted gratefully. Jenny laid her daughter on my couch to sleep, and I covered her with a blanket. Then she sat at the kitchen table and started talking. "I only found out about you 3 years ago," she admitted. "Michael told me you ran away from home at 17. Cut contact with the family. I always thought it was strange but never pushed. Hearing your podcast was a shock." I confronted him and he finally admitted the truth. I just listened. "I don't know what to believe anymore," Jenny seemed sincere. "I'm horrified by what they did to you," she continued. "I insisted Michael reach out, but I had no idea they were going to ask you for money. I'm embarrassed and angry about it. Yes, I need surgery for a thyroid issue, but we have insurance. It's your parents who are in financial trouble, not us." I asked why she came. She looked me directly in the eyes. "You deserve to know the whole truth," she said. "Your parents have been telling everyone that you abandoned the family, that you're mentally unstable, that you stole money from them before disappearing. They said they spent years looking for you. All lies to cover up what they did." I felt like I'd been punched. "How do you know this is true?" She pulled out her phone and showed me old Facebook posts. My mother asking for prayers to find her troubled daughter. My father claiming I had taken their savings before running away. Posts about hiring private investigators, about checking homeless shelters, all carefully crafted to make them look like victims. All dated years after they abandoned me. Jenny apologized for being part of it, even unknowingly. She said she'd also confronted my parents. Said they'd confessed everything to her when she threatened to tell the truth to the whole family. That they were desperate now because their lies were unraveling. Because my podcast had people asking questions they couldn't answer. Her daughter woke up then. A cute little girl with curly hair. "This is Lily," Jenny said softly. "She's 3. I'm pregnant with another girl. I want my children to know their aunt, but only if you want that too. No pressure, no guilt. Just an open door in case you want to walk through it." After they left, I sat in my apartment for hours processing everything. I called Melissa and told her again everything Jenny had said. She wasn't surprised. "Abusers often control the narrative," she explained. "They create alternate realities where they're the victims." She asked what I wanted to do now. Honestly, I didn't know. That night, I got another email from my father. This one was different. Angry, threatening. He said if I kept telling lies about them online, they would sue me for defamation. Said they had proof I'd stolen from them. Said they'd go to the media with their version if I didn't take down the podcast and issue a public apology. Said they expected financial compensation for damage to their reputation. I forwarded it to Melissa and then to my lawyer, Marcus. He called me immediately. "This is an empty threat," he assured me. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. Save everything but don't respond. I'll handle it if they actually file a lawsuit, which I doubt they will. People who really intend to sue usually don't announce it in advance. The next day I got a call from Michael. I let it go to voicemail. You sounded panicked. Emma, Jenny told me she visited you. Our parents are furious. They're saying terrible things about her now too. I'm afraid they'll try something desperate. Please call me back on Jenny's phone, not mine. I didn't know what to believe anymore. I called Marcus again. He suggested we meet with Michael and Jenny somewhere public, with him present as my lawyer, just to hear them out. I reluctantly agreed. We scheduled a meeting at a restaurant near Marcus's office for the next day. They arrived on time. They both looked terrible, stressed, exhausted. Jenny had a bruise on her arm she kept trying to hide. Michael couldn't make eye contact. I'm Marcus, Emma's lawyer, he said when we sat down, which made Michael flinch. But we sat, ordered coffee, and they started talking. The story that emerged was worse than I imagined. My parents had been living off Michael for years, coming in and out of his house, taking money for emergencies, babysitting his kids while criticizing his parenting. When Jenny confronted them about me, my father grabbed her arm so hard it left marks. Michael kicked them out. They were now staying at a motel, calling constantly, showing up at his work. I listened without interrupting, watched my brother break down as he described how our parents had controlled him his whole life. How they convinced him I had abandoned them. How he'd been too scared to question their version of events. How he'd been trapped in their web of manipulation and lies for 12 years. How he feared they'd hurt Jenny or the kids. Marcus asked careful questions about financial entanglements, about property titles and bank accounts, about whether my parents had house keys. Michael answered everything. Said they'd been co-signers on his mortgage. Said his father was still on his bank account from college. Said they had spare keys. Said they knew all his passwords. Marcus wrote everything down, occasionally glancing at me. By the end of the meeting, I felt exhausted but clearer. This wasn't just about me anymore. Michael and Jenny were victims too, in their own way. Different from me but still trapped. Marcus suggested they talk to a lawyer he trusted. He gave them a colleague's card and told them to immediately change locks, passwords, and bank accounts. They nodded with a look of dismay but gratitude. As we were leaving, Michael hugged me. This time I hugged back. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something. Recognition that we'd both been hurt by the same people. That maybe we could help each other heal. That night, I got a series of increasingly unhinged messages from my parents' numbers. Accusations, threats, attempts at emotional manipulation. I blocked them all. Then I called Jenny. I asked if they were safe. She said yes. They'd changed the locks. Spent the previous night at a friend's house. We're considering filing for a restraining order, she said. I felt relief but still worry. The next morning I woke up to my phone ringing. It was Jenny, hysterical. They broke into our house, she sobbed. They took Lily's baby photos, important documents, and Michael's laptop. They left a note. Family business should stay in the family. I told her to call the police immediately. Said I'd meet them at their house. I called Marcus on the way. When I arrived, there was a police car in front of their house. An officer was taking statements in the living room. The place was a mess. Open drawers, papers scattered everywhere. Michael was sitting on the couch with his head in his hands. Jenny was pointing out missing items to the officer. I introduced myself as a family member and said I was there to help. The officer seemed skeptical that grandparents would break in. Are you sure they didn't use a key? He asked. Maybe it's a misunderstanding. Jenny showed him her bruised arm and told him about the escalating behavior, the threats, the stalking. He wrote everything down but didn't seem convinced. He said without proof it would be difficult to prove who did it. After the police left, we cleaned up together. We found more things missing. Photo albums, financial documents, their spare car key. Michael looked defeated. This is my fault, he said. I should have protected my family better. Should have confronted them years ago. Should have looked for you back then. I didn't disagree, but I didn't push it either. We'd already been through that. Marcus arrived as we were finishing. He looked around with a grim expression. He said this changed everything. That we needed to document everything. That breaking and entering was a serious crime. That we should all stay somewhere else for a few days. That he'd help us file for emergency protective orders in the morning. We nodded, too exhausted to argue. Jenny packed bags for them while Michael and I reinforced the house security as best we could. Changed the locks again, checked windows, discussed security cameras. It felt surreal taking these precautions against our own parents, but it was also necessary. They'd crossed an irreversible line. As we were leaving, Michael got a text from our father. Just 3 words. We're watching you. He showed me the message, his hands shaking. I took a screenshot and sent it to Marcus. Then I made a decision. I told them they were coming to stay with me. My building had security, cameras, and a doorman who already knew not to let our parents in. They accepted readily. That night, the 4 of us ate takeout in my living room. Lily played with toys Jenny had packed. We talked quietly about next steps, about restraining orders, about police reports, about changing phone numbers and email addresses, about maybe moving to a new house, about how to protect ourselves long-term. It wasn't the family reunion I'd ever imagined. Sitting there with the brother who let me be abandoned, his wife who believed lies about me, and their daughter who was innocent in all of this. But somehow it felt right, like we were finally facing the truth together. Maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the ashes of what our parents had destroyed. The next morning, Marcus called and said he'd filed for emergency protective orders for all of us. Said we needed to appear in court the following week to make them permanent. He also said he'd reported the break-in to a detective he knew who was taking the case more seriously than the officers who responded. Said we should stay together until this was resolved. I agreed. I called my assistant and said I'd work from home indefinitely. Family emergency. She understood and rearranged my schedule. I set up a workspace in my guest room for Michael, who also needed to work remotely. Jenny and Lily took over my living room, building pillow forts and watching cartoons. It was strange having people in my space. I'd lived alone for years. I liked my quiet routine, my clean counters, my empty sink. But there was something comforting about the noise too. Lily's laughter, Jenny's low humming as she folded laundry, Michael typing in the other room. It felt like family. Not the family that abandoned me, but maybe the family we could become. That afternoon, my doorman called saying there was a delivery. Flowers. I told him to check the card before bringing them up. He read it to me. We know where you are. This isn't over. I told him to refuse the delivery. Call the police if the delivery person wouldn't take them back. Then I called Marcus again. He said he'd add this to our case, that it strengthened our request for restraining orders, that we were doing everything right. I didn't tell Michael or Jenny about the flowers. They were already stressed enough. Instead, I ordered extra groceries, made dinner for everyone, played with Lily, tried to create some normalcy in this bizarre situation. But that night, after everyone was asleep, I sat alone in my kitchen and finally allowed myself to feel everything. The fear, the anger, the sadness, the strange hope. I cried silently into a dish towel so no one would hear me. In the morning, Jenny found me making coffee and asked if I was okay. I lied. Said yes, but she didn't believe me. She sat at the counter. It's okay not to be okay, Emma, she said softly. I'm not either. Michael cries in the shower where he thinks no one can hear. Lily keeps asking when we can go home. This whole situation is terrible, but I'm grateful we're facing it together. I looked at her, this woman I barely knew who was somehow now part of my life. I asked why she came to me that first day, why she chose to believe me instead of the family she'd known for years. She smiled sadly. I always felt something was off about your parents, about the stories they told, about how they controlled Michael. The podcast confirmed my suspicions. I couldn't let my daughters grow up thinking abandoning a child was acceptable. We hugged for the first time. It was strange but genuine, like the beginning of something. Not exactly friendship, not yet, but understanding, solidarity, a shared determination to break the cycle of mistreatment that had hurt us all. The following days fell into a routine. Work, cook, play with Lily, talk to Marcus, startle at unexpected noises, flinch when the phone rang, live in a strange limbo between domestic normalcy and underlying tension. We were safe but not at peace. Together but still healing. Family but still learning what that meant. On Friday, Marcus called with news. The detective had found evidence. Security footage from a gas station near Michael's house showed our parents' car parked there during the break-in. The hearing for the protective order was set for Monday. He was confident it would be granted. We all felt relieved but still anxious. Still waiting for the next escalation. It happened that night. A brick broke Michael's car window in the parking lot. This time no note. No need for one. The message was clear. The building's security footage showed a man in a baseball cap. Face carefully turned away from cameras. We couldn't prove it was our father, but we all knew. We filed another police report. Added it to our case. Tried not to let Lily see how scared we were. Sunday night, we sat together drafting a plan for court. What to wear, what to say, what evidence to bring, how to explain our family history without sounding crazy. How to make the judge understand the pattern of escalation, how to protect ourselves legally and physically. It was surreal discussing our parents this way, like talking about strangers. Dangerous strangers who happened to share our DNA. As we talked, my phone buzzed with an email notification from my mother. Subject line, last chance. I almost deleted it without reading, but something made me open it. It was short, just one line. If you go to court tomorrow, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. I showed it to Marcus, who had stayed for dinner. He took a screenshot, added it to our file, and told me not to respond. Said this kind of threat only helped our case. That night, none of us slept well. I kept checking locks, listening for any noise, wondering what my parents would do next. Wondering if we were overreacting, if we were underestimating the situation, wondering how my life had reached this point. From abandoned teenager to successful businesswoman to hiding in my own apartment from the people who gave me life. Monday morning arrived with a strange calm. We dressed carefully. Business casual, respectable, trustworthy. Jenny asked a friend to watch Lily. We drove to the courthouse in separate cars just in case. We met Marcus on the steps outside. He looked confident, briefcase in hand, told us he'd handled dozens of cases like this. He knew the evidence was strong, that judges took threats seriously, that we'd be protected. When we entered the courthouse, I saw them. My parents standing near the entrance, looking older than I remembered, somehow smaller. My mother saw me first and made a move to come toward me. My father held her arm, held her back. They watched us pass, didn't speak, didn't try to approach, just stared at us with a mixture of anger and something else, something that might have been fear. We walked past them as we entered the building, identified ourselves at security, followed Marcus to the correct courtroom, and sat together on a bench waiting for our case to be called. I felt my parents enter behind us. I could almost sense them sitting across the room, could almost hear them whispering, but I didn't turn around. I kept my eyes forward, focused on breathing. The judge called our case. We stood and walked forward and took our places. Marcus calmly presented our evidence. The break-in, the threatening messages, the flowers, the brick, the email, the history of abandonment and manipulation. The judge listened carefully, asked clarifying questions, looked at our parents with growing concern. When it was their turn, my parents approached the bench. No lawyer, just them. My father spoke first, claiming we were exaggerating, that they were just trying to reconnect with family, that they'd never broken any laws, that they loved us and wanted to make amends, that this was all a misunderstanding that got out of proportion. The judge asked about the security footage, the threatening messages. My father denied everything. Said it wasn't them in the footage, said their messages were being misinterpreted, said they were the victims, not us. My mother nodded along, occasionally dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Then the judge asked them directly about abandoning me at 17. My father hesitated and started talking about troubled teenagers, about difficult decisions, about doing what they thought was best. The judge interrupted him and asked again, directly. Did you leave your minor child alone and move to another state? My father looked down and mumbled something about financial hardship. The judge's expression hardened. After hearing both sides, the judge granted our restraining orders. 3 years, no contact, no approaching our homes or workplaces, no sending messages through third parties. Any violation would result in immediate arrest. My parents looked stunned, like they couldn't believe this was happening, like they'd never faced consequences before. As we left the courthouse, my mother called my name just once. Quietly. I kept walking. Didn't look back. I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders with each step. I wasn't healed, not yet, but this was the beginning. The first real boundary that couldn't be crossed without serious consequences. Outside, Marcus shook all our hands. Said we'd done well. Said the orders were solid. Said to call him immediately if there were any violations. He said he was proud of us for standing up for ourselves. We thanked him, feeling dazed but relieved, like survivors of a natural disaster blinking in the sunlight. Michael hugged me on the courthouse steps. A real hug this time. I'm sorry, Emma, he said, voice thick. For everything. For not protecting you back then. For not finding you sooner. For believing their lies. For bringing this chaos back into your life. I hugged him back. Told him it would be okay. That we had each other now. That we could build something new. Something better. As we walked to our cars, I felt my phone vibrate. A message from an unknown number. I almost didn't check. But when I did, I felt a chill. It was a photo of Lily at the friend's house, playing in the yard, unaware she was being watched. Below it, just 4 words. This isn't over yet. I showed the message to Michael immediately. His face went pale. He called Jenny, who was already on her way to pick up Lily. Told her to meet us at my apartment. Then I called Marcus from the car. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. He told me to forward the message to him and drive straight home. Said he'd call the police and meet us there. Said this was a clear violation of the restraining order. Said to stay calm but vigilant. The drive back felt endless. I kept checking my rearview mirrors, paranoid that my parents were following me. When I finally arrived at my building's garage, I sat in the car for a minute, just breathing, trying to pull myself together before facing Michael and Jenny. They needed me to be strong now. I found them already at my apartment. Jenny clutching Lily like she might disappear. The poor child looked confused and scared. Michael was pacing back and forth, running his hands through his hair repeatedly. I showed them the message. Jenny started crying. Said they were watching her baby. Said she'd never forgive herself if something happened to Lily. Michael hugged them both, looking more determined than I'd ever seen him. Marcus arrived 20 minutes later with 2 police officers. They took our statements, looked at the text messages, made some calls. Said they'd send a patrol car to our friend's house to check the situation. Said they'd try to trace the number. Said they'd increase patrols around my building. All the right things. But I could tell they didn't grasp how dangerous my parents could be, how unpredictable, how desperate. After the police left, we sat in my living room trying to figure out next steps. Jenny suggested going to a hotel under different names. Michael thought we should drive to his cousin's house, a few states away. I just sat there getting angrier and angrier. This was absurd. We'd done everything right. Followed all the legal channels, got the restraining orders, and they were still terrorizing us, still controlling our lives through fear. I stood up suddenly. I'm tired of running, I said. I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of letting them dictate how I live my life. They already stole my childhood. I'm not going to hand them my adult life too. Michael looked at me like I was crazy. What are you planning to do? Honestly, I didn't know yet, but I knew we couldn't keep living like this. That night, we took turns keeping watch while the others slept. I took the first shift, sitting by my living room window with all the lights off, watching the street below. Around 2 a.m., I spotted a car I recognized. My father's old Buick. It circled the block 3 times before parking across the street. I took photos with my phone and then woke Michael. We watched together as our father sat in the car, staring at my building, not approaching, not violating the restraining order technically, just letting us know he was there, watching, waiting. In the morning, I sent the photos to Marcus. He said it was concerning but technically not a violation since my father stayed in his car, away from the building. Said to keep documenting everything. Said he'd spoken with the detective again. I hung up feeling frustrated. The legal system had limits. Restraining orders were just pieces of paper. They couldn't stop someone determined to hurt you. Jenny and Michael decided to take Lily to a hotel for a few days somewhere with interior hallways and good security. I helped them pack, hugged them goodbye, promised to check in every few hours. After they left, I sat in my empty apartment feeling strangely calm, like I'd reached some kind of decision point. Like I couldn't live in this limbo anymore. I called Melissa. Told her everything and asked what she thought I should do. She was silent for a minute. Then she asked me a question that hit me hard. What do you actually want from your parents? Not what I didn't want, not what I was afraid of, but what I actively wanted. I realized I'd never thought about it that way. After I hung up, I made a list. What I wanted. First, to live without fear. Second, to have a relationship with my brother and his family. 3, to stop feeling responsible for my parents' actions. 4, to be free from the past. Nowhere on that list was reconciliation with my parents. There was no forgiveness anywhere. No understanding about why they did what they did. I just wanted to be free of them. That afternoon I did something crazy. I sent an email to my parents. Just one short message. I know you're watching my building. I know you won't stop, so let's talk one last time. Tomorrow noon. The coffee shop on 8th Street. Just me. No police, no lawyers. After this, you leave us alone forever. I hit send before I could change my mind. I didn't tell Michael or Jenny. Didn't tell Marcus or Melissa. This was something I needed to do for myself. I wasn't naive enough to think my parents would suddenly become reasonable people, but I needed to face them on my terms. I needed to say what I needed to say. I needed to end this cycle once and for all. My father responded within minutes. We'll be there. No threats, no emotional manipulation, just confirmation. I spent the rest of the day preparing, not physically but mentally. Thinking about what I wanted to say, what I needed them to hear, the boundaries I needed to set. I slept surprisingly well that night. Making a decision had lifted a weight off my shoulders. The next morning I dressed carefully. Not to impress them but to feel strong, confident. I took an Uber to the coffee shop and arrived 15 minutes early. I chose a table in the back corner where I could see the door but wasn't immediately visible from outside. I ordered a coffee I didn't really want. I sat waiting, surprisingly calm. They arrived exactly at noon. They looked older than at the courthouse, more tired. My mother saw me first and nudged my father. They approached slowly, like approaching a wild animal that might bolt, and sat across from me without saying a word. We just looked at each other for a long moment. These strangers who were my parents. These people who shaped me in ways they'd never understand. I spoke first. I didn't call this meeting to reconcile, to give you money, or to hear apologies. I called it so you understand one thing. It's over. You lost. Not just the court case. You lost me, you lost Michael, you lost your grandchildren, you lost any chance of being part of our lives. And if you can't accept that, if you keep stalking us, threatening us, trying to force your way back in, I will destroy you. My father started to interrupt. I raised my hand. I'm not finished. Then I pulled out my phone and showed them screenshots of all the threatening messages, the photo of Lily, the emails. I'll send copies to everyone in your lives. Your siblings, your church, your neighbors, your employers. Everyone. Not yet, but I will if you contact us again. If you come near our homes, if you even mention our names to anyone we know. My mother started crying. We just want our family back. We made mistakes, but we deserve another chance. We're getting older and don't want to die alone. I looked at her for a long moment. You should have thought about that before abandoning your 17-year-old daughter. Before lying to everyone about what you did. Before breaking into Michael's house. Before threatening your own grandchild. My father got angry immediately. You're ungrateful. You were always difficult. You turned your brother against us. You owe us for raising you. I just laughed in his face. You really think you're entitled to gratitude for doing the bare minimum as a parent for 17 years before abandoning me completely? You think your parenting was so exemplary I should thank you for it? He had no answer for that. Just sat there with his face red, silent. My mother still cried, but I felt nothing. No guilt, no compassion, just a cold clarity that these people would never change, would never take responsibility, would never be the parents I deserved. I stood up to leave. This is your last warning. Next time you violate the restraining order, I won't just call the police. I'll make sure everyone you know understands exactly what kind of people you really are. I have the resources to make your lives very difficult if you force me to. I don't want to do that, but I will to protect my family. My real family. Michael, Jenny, Lily, the people I choose. As I walked away, my mother called out behind me. Do you really hate us that much? I stopped and turned around. I don't hate you. I don't feel anything for you. You're strangers to me now, and the loss is yours, not mine. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in years. I called Michael from the sidewalk and told him everything. He was upset at first that I'd met them alone. Worried about possible retaliation. But above all, he seemed relieved that someone had finally stood up to them directly. Said he wished he'd had the courage to do that years ago. I went back to my apartment, packed a bag, and decided to stay with Michael and his family at the hotel for a few days, just as a precaution. When I arrived there, Lily ran to hug me. Aunt Emma, she called me for the first time. I almost cried. Jenny hugged me too. Said she was proud of me. Said she hoped I'd finally find peace. Michael just squeezed my shoulder. No words needed. We spent the next days in a strange limbo, waiting for my parents to make the next move, checking our phones constantly, startling at unexpected noises, but nothing happened. No calls. No texts. No emails. No sign of their car. Just silence. After a week, Michael and Jenny decided to go back home. They changed all the locks again, installed security cameras, made plans to put the house up for sale, and started looking for properties closer to my city. I went back to my apartment too. Back to work, back to something resembling normal life. 2 weeks passed, then a month. Nothing from my parents. Marcus checked regularly. Said the detective confirmed they'd returned to their home state. Said the restraining orders were still in effect. Said we should stay vigilant but try to move forward with our lives. Slowly we did. Michael found a new job in my city. Jenny enrolled Lily in preschool. They bought a house 20 minutes from my apartment. We had dinner together every Sunday. We started building new traditions, new memories. A new kind of family based on choice instead of obligation. I kept waiting to feel something about my parents. Maybe sadness, guilt, or anger. But I mostly felt relief, like I'd finally shed an enormous weight I'd been carrying since I was 17. Like I could finally focus on the future instead of the past. 6 months after the confrontation at the coffee shop, I received a letter forwarded through Marcus so my address would remain private. From my mother. I almost didn't open it. Almost threw it away without reading. But curiosity won. It was short, just a few paragraphs. No excuses this time, no demands, just acknowledgement that they'd hurt me deeply, that they'd failed as parents, that they understood why I wanted nothing to do with them, that they were getting counseling, that they'd respect the restraining orders, that they hoped someday I might be willing to hear a sincere apology, but they'd understand if that day never came. I showed the letter to Michael. He'd received a similar one. We talked about it over dinner that night, about whether it was sincere, whether it changed anything, whether we could trust them again. We didn't reach any conclusions, just agreed to take it one day at a time, to prioritize our healing, to protect the family we were building. I keep the letter in my desk drawer, not because I'm ready to forgive, not because I want reconciliation, but because it represents something important. My parents finally acknowledging my right to set boundaries, my right to choose who I allow in my life, my right to define family on my own terms. Last week, Lily had her 4th birthday party. Michael and Jenny invited me to help plan. We did it at my apartment. Balloons everywhere. A cake I ordered from a fancy bakery. Presents piled on the coffee table. Lily running around in a princess dress, laughing. Jenny taking photos. Michael grilling on my balcony. Friends stopping by throughout the day. So much noise. So much joy. At one point, I went to the kitchen for a moment, alone, just watching through the doorway as Michael spun Lily in the air and Jenny laughed at something a friend said. My apartment, once so empty and quiet, full of life and love. I thought about that note on my kitchen counter 12 years ago. You'll figure it out. And I did. Not the way they meant, but I figured it out. I figured out what family should be, how love should look, what I always deserved. I'm not saying everything's perfect now. I still have trust issues. I still go to therapy every week. I still have nightmares sometimes about being abandoned. I still get startled when the doorbell rings unexpectedly. But I'm healing. We all are. Building something new from the fragments of our past. Something stronger, something chosen, something real. Sometimes people ask me if I'll ever reconcile with my parents, if I'll ever let them meet Lily, if I'll ever forgive them for what they did. I don't have answers to those questions yet. Maybe someday, maybe never. But what I do know is this: I'm no longer defined by what they did to me. I'm defined by what I built afterward, by the person I chose to become, by the family I chose to create.